I was just shocked because I was like, okay, well, when I went to the doctor, they took my blood pressure and it was high. And so he showed me standing up, which would normally be the working position, my blood pressure was low. Sitting down in the resting position, my blood pressure was high. So it was reversed. And so that was just one of the symptoms amongst the other ones I discovered, which led me to my diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome.
Hi, I'm Linus Woods-Mullins, and I love to help women to vibe, to be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. So come on, let's vibe. I had a friend once who kept getting tired, and she couldn't figure out why she was getting so tired, and this was about 25 years ago. And she took tests, she went to doctors, and no one could quite figure out what was going on with her. I started just looking on the internet for white papers on her symptoms, and I came across a term that I had never heard before called chronic fatigue. And I said, I don't know exactly what this is, because this was before I got into wellness. And I said, but you need to ask a doctor what this is and if he's familiar with it. Well, she did, and he wasn't that familiar, but he and his team got together and after a series of tests and consulting with some experts at the time in that field, she was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. Chronic fatigue syndrome has probably been around for a long time, but I'm sure many were misdiagnosed. Today, we have somebody with us who knows firsthand what it's like to deal with chronic fatigue syndrome. I'm so glad to introduce to you Rochelle Ben-Jose, female combat Air Force veteran. And now she's a holistic chronic fatigue health coach. And she found a way to heal herself holistically from chronic fatigue. And her goal now is to teach others about this same issue and to help restore hope to millions of people that have been suffering from chronic fatigue, because many times it is misdiagnosed or goes undiagnosed. Welcome, Rachelle, to the V.I.B.E Living Podcast. It's wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So tell us a little bit about you and how this whole journey with chronic fatigue started for you.
Okay. Well, it started when I was contracting as a civilian working overseas for the government. I'm prior military. I'm a veteran. And so as a veteran, we have the experience to go and work overseas as a government contractor, for the military and with the military. So my position was working overnight, grave shift. And it just so happened that working this position, I had the last 6 months of my contract left. So I decided to work the whole 6 months straight through. We worked about 12 to 14-hour shifts, and we didn't have any days off. Okay. So that combined with a horrible supervisor that had just come on. And I was just so stressed out from dealing with my supervisor, working at night. And the one thing is, when you work at night, you don't get the same quality of sleep that you do, when you just, you work during the day and you go to sleep at night like normal. So I did that for 6 months nonstop. And I was, yes, very tired when I was on my way home and by the time I got home. So I took about a month and I was trying to get acclimated, once I left and went back to the United States. And I would just notice little things that were going on. I injured myself exercising. I was trying to get back to that time zone. So my sleep wasn't quite, the way it was normally, or it would have been if I wasn't making that transition. And I was just having a difficult time exercising and losing weight, that type of thing. So, like I said, it took about a month to really settle in. And then shortly after that, I had moved to Texas. And I went to the VA there. I had a physical. And one thing from my physical came back, my doctors told me that I had high blood pressure. And I was like, wow, really? Because I've never had high blood pressure. I've always been active. My blood pressure has always been low.
Mm.
Okay. So, maybe a little bit lower than, I guess, normal, you would say. So my doctor's like, well, I can put you on, some medication. And they're always quick to put you on medication. That's the first thing they want to offer. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not taking any medication. I said, if I have a problem, I can deal with it. And I'll just, watch what I eat and lower it, through food because I've never been real big on taking medication, anyways. So after that, I noticed that I started waking up 3 o'clock in the morning with hot flashes. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. And so then shortly after that, I went to the acupuncturist and they were trying to give me herbs and whatnot, but it wasn't working. So when I had gotten back into the United States, I completed my certificate for holistic health coaching. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to go to, seminars, try and educate myself some more on different things. And so I went to a seminar. This seminar was on stress. It just so happens. And so, I did learn some things in that seminar. And then the seminar was put on by an acupuncturist. This particular doctor had done 4 years in America and 4 years in China. So he kind of blended what he learned with, allopathic medicine here in the Western world. And so once he gave me a physical, and that was free, it came along with a seminar, he diagnosed me with chronic fatigue syndrome. And I'd never heard of it up until that point myself. And so I was just shocked because I was like, okay, well, when I went to the doctor, they took my blood pressure and it was high. And so he showed me standing up, which would normally be the working position, my blood pressure was low. Sitting down in the resting position, my blood pressure was high. So it was reversed. And so that was just one of the symptoms amongst the other ones I discovered, which led me to my diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome.
That's pretty fascinating. But first thing is that all of our bodies are unique unto themselves. No one body is alike. And when we go to the doctor, we need to keep that in mind. That's why it's so important to keep a journal of your symptoms and things that are going on so that you can discuss it intelligently with your doctor. And I always say that if your doctor is the kind of doctor who doesn't want a lot of questions, doesn't want to take time to talk to you, then you probably need to find another doctor, because that conversation is pivotal in terms of his being able to diagnose you, because you are so different from the last patient that he had. So you got the diagnosis of chronic fatigue. And what they tell you about it?
One of the end results of chronic stress, and actually it has to do with the nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system and your adrenal glands. So I've always really referred to it as adrenal fatigue. And it's kind of like your adrenals aren't functioning as they would normally function, and your body's stuck in fight or flight mode. Okay. So your body is kind of, confused on the situation that you're in because of all the chronic stress. So it's kind of stuck. Okay. So basically your adrenal glands, they're not functioning the way they should be. And so then it affects your nervous system. Okay. And then that affects, for women, well, your hormones. It affects your brain. Okay. So you may have brain fog, muscle weakness, and muscle pain, specifically for men. As I said before, I was getting hot flashes, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. It affects your gut. Okay. So that's important also. And it also affects your immune system. So it affects several parts.
That's interesting too, because we have a tendency as women, especially midlife women, to sometimes ignore those little signs and just kind of write it off as something else. But when you take a look at the accumulation of occurrences of all the different little signs, it's amazing how you will come up with a diagnosis. But because we do not keep track of it, or we kind of push it back, we don't always, let anyone know what's going on. And then, an event happens, and then that's when you find out. I would imagine your goal is to help women before the event happens. And tell me, how do you do that? What kinds of things do you help women with in terms of preventing chronic fatigue or dealing with the leftover residuals of chronic fatigue?
Well, I would say it's more once they get to that stage, you could, I don't know if you can prevent it. I think it's more like dealing with your stress and knowing how to deal with stress to prevent things from going that far and that being the end result. If you are dealing with chronic fatigue, it's one of those things where you cannot just look at the one thing, like you can't sleep. Okay. You have fatigue. Obviously, you have to look at the whole person. And depending on your symptoms, it's going to kind of affect, what you want to address through food, exercise, just your habits and your lifestyle, basically. So it's not like you can go on a low fat diet. It's nothing like that. I think that's a common misconception. It's not like you can just address, okay, I can't sleep, let me go on Adderall or something like that. That's not going to help you either. I do remember also when I had gone to that first acupuncturist, she thought that, oh, well, maybe you're going through menopause. I was 42 at the time. And I was like, no, that's not it. That's not it. You know what I mean? That's not it. I think that people can get hung up on that one symptom with their doctor and maybe disregard all the other symptoms,
Right.
thinking that it's just that one thing and it's not. And so that's why when it comes to doctors, allopathic, they treat one thing. They'll treat one thing at a time. But with chronic fatigue, you have to treat the whole person. And it's nutrition. You know what I mean? It's certain exercises.
Absolutely.
It's a myriad of things.
When you were going through your chronic fatigue experience, what were some of the biggest obstacles that you encountered?
I couldn't exercise like I did before. I couldn't eat the same foods. Sugar is something you have to stay away from. I would eat sugar and I would crash. I mean, I had to take a nap. I would just be so tired. I couldn't function. But sugar comes in many different forms, you know? So that's why you have to be really careful. You can't eat all fruits. Some fruits have too much sugar. Okay.
And let's talk about that too, because you were saying, be careful about eating sugar. What kinds of things should we be looking out for in terms of sugar consumption? What kind of things should we definitely avoid when it comes to trying to cut back on sugars?
Orange juice. It seems healthy. It's not going to be something that you want to consume. I didn't consume any orange juice. You can find other things. You can find alternatives. Processed foods. Okay. You you can't do processed foods. You just cannot.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how much sugar and other things.
Oh yeah.
Not-
Chemicals.
Yeah,
Yes.
chemicals and all kinds of things, hormones to prolong the chicken's life so that when they cut it, her thighs are fully developed or whatever they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gross. But
So yeah, if you're addicted to food, then the processed foods are going to be hard to cut out, or maybe the sugars and sweets, depending on the person. That's something you have to really deal with. And then just establishing a routine, because consistency is key to overcoming chronic fatigue.
now you mentioned the whole stress factor and that being a huge symptom or indicator, if you will, of this chronic disease element that you have. What kinds of things from a perspective did you do to begin to minimize your stress?
Oh yeah. Well, one thing that I did more of was meditation. A lot of people, like I'd meditated in the past, but I think a lot of people don't meditate and don't understand exactly the benefits of meditation. So meditation is good for stress, good for sleeping, good for losing weight. It has many benefits. But when speaking about stress, that's something that you can do morning, evening, whenever, is meditate, and it will lower your stress level.
That's interesting because so many people are thinking that you have to do all these things and take all this stuff in order to lower your stress levels because it's kind of a a domino effect. Once you begin to start doing what's right for your body, then the body starts responding to that. And then intuitively, you'll know other things to do as well to heal. What are the key takeaways that you have surmised from your experience in dealing with chronic fatigue?
That anything's possible. There's no reason to lose hope. You can heal yourself naturally. There are ways to do that. And I know in the beginning, when I was diagnosed, they offered me acupuncture, and that's one way and one tool, but that's not the only tool. Um, and then also, this is not curable via any type of drug or medicine. It's just not.
That's very interesting. I was just thinking about when these new drugs come out, we're never really sure how things are going to react. We would have done the studies, sometimes years of studies, but as I said earlier in the program, because we're all so different, it's really hard to predict how people might react to any kind of drug or any kind of practice to try to get rid of whatever symptom that's undesirable that you have. Now, along your journey, what were some of the key learnings that you learned about you and your body and how it was impacted by chronic disease?
Yeah. So I would say not everybody is susceptible to chronic fatigue.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Because everybody does have a different makeup of their body, but I know that I am.
Mhm.
And from that point on, I decided that, you know what? You don't have to challenge and argue with everybody. Um, if someone or a situation is going to cause any type of stress, then maybe you need to, eliminate that. So it's kind of like you got to pick your battles and just realize that I don't want to get sucked back into that disease again. So I need to take care of myself.
So would you say you're 100% chronic fatigue free?
Oh, yeah. I don't have any of those symptoms or experience that I did eating sugar or anything like that. Yeah, I don't have any issues like that anymore.
So what were some of the strategies that you used to be effective regarding your energy?
Oh, well, like I said, consistency. Once you do decide on a routine of what you're going to eat every day, how you're going to exercise, so on and so forth, you want to write down every day what you do, what you're experiencing, because keeping track of how your day went, day by day and whatnot, is the only way you're going to realize that you're actually healing.
Hmm.
And, I slept a little bit longer today. I didn't wake up, you know what I mean?
Well,
With hot flashes, that type of thing.
I would imagine too, talking about it and getting it out, sharing the experience also is one way to eradicate the disease's hold on you psychologically. Many times we have to change the stories we tell about what we've been through. Not that it didn't happen and not that we want to lie about it, but we want to put some kind of a spin on it that lets us, reminds us that you got through this. You are whole. And there were some positive things that came out of it. Maybe the positive thing is that you no longer eat red widgets where before you did. So many times with the diagnosis comes a sense of confirmation. First of all, I know I'm not going crazy.
Yeah.
Also, a sense of having listened to your body that even though seem thing to be okay on the surface, because that's one thing I hear attributed to women all the time. And I'm wondering if you've heard this too. Oh, you're just tired. Oh, you work so hard, you play so many roles, you do so much. I mean, I hear that a lot in regards to women. And I always wonder because of my friends' experience with chronic fatigue, how do they know that they're just tired? Have you ever run into that situation before?
Yeah, I agree. Well, just through research, not only with the symptoms, but the length of time
Mhm.
that you've been consistently experiencing those symptoms. So they say if you've been experiencing these symptoms for 6 months or longer, then you probably are experiencing some chronic fatigue. Even going to the doctor, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mhm.
They may or may not confirm it for you because, oh, like, like you said, oh, you just, this and oh, and maybe not even acknowledge, that you're experiencing these things
Right.
also,
Right. That's something that's very real. What specific strategies have you developed over time that were most effective when it came to regaining some of your energy?
Just make sure that I stay consistent with the food that I'm intaking and also implementing just natural products, whether it, be lotion or, anything that I put on my body. So trying to avoid anything that has all those chemicals and whatnot. I don't use perfume. I do detox. So that's one thing that I do. I detox.
Now, what's one of your favorite yet simple detoxes? Do you have a recipe you can share with us?
Well, I tend to order herbs. I tend to order herbs is what I do.
You take the Ayurvedic route for detoxing?
Yeah, I guess you can say that. It's it's like a huge combination of herbs and they don't taste well at all. But if I was to give I mean, with chronic fatigue, you really don't want to do any fasting because of your blood sugar and all that. But possibly you can do juice. I like to do juice, smoothies, fruit, but it just, like I said, it depends on the fruit. But that's what I do now that I'm past that.
Right, right. Now, how has your personal healing influenced the way you coach others with similar conditions?
Well, I could just say that I can relate because I've experienced this firsthand. So I can relate to people in what they're going through. And it's easy to suggest different things for them to try.
Yes, I do. It's interesting because I haven't worked with anyone with chronic fatigue except for my friend. And at that time, because the doctors weren't quite sure what to do, and he was into wellness a little bit. I didn't know anything about the mind, body, spirit movement, holistic, nothing, whatever. But through her, he kind of opened up a world that I hadn't really considered. Aromatherapy, meditation, yoga, Chinese medicine, tapping. I mean, she went through the plethora of things to see what could help. And actually, they all helped a little bit somewhat, if for no other reason that it made her feel better because she was doing something towards trying to get better. Over time, she did get better, but unfortunately, about 2 or 3 years later, after she was diagnosed, then she was then diagnosed with Alzheimer's, which was, I don't know if this was an offshoot of what happened with the chronic fatigue. They don't really know. It happened. And unfortunately, she ended up passing as a result of complications from Alzheimer's. But I really do believe that she did extend her life in terms of chronic fatigue as a result of doing all these different things that gave her some relief, helped renew her energy. And she was so much more vital when she was, one of the things that she did a lot of was using herb and also aromatherapy. Aromatherapy seemed to help her a lot. She had certain mixtures that she would put at certain pulse points, and that seemed to help as well. Now, when it comes to working with people with chronic fatigue, what's your ultimate goal in helping others, and how do you plan to achieve that?
Well, I have a program that I've created based on everything that I've gone through that I know that works. And it's called the Four Core Blueprint. And it's a group program and course that people can sign up for. But my ultimate goal is to restore health because people do need help. And a lot of people have gone without help, sometimes for years, just because they're either misdiagnosed or not diagnosed by their physicians. And so, at least if I can help to restore some hope, people will heal. People will feel better. People will live a healthier, vibrant life. I just think that it's important because I think for the US, it's like 3.3 million people suffering with chronic fatigue syndrome is what I believe I read. And it's just sad because there is a way. There is a way to get through this.
That's a lot of tired people. That's a lot of tired people, which means they're not able to really live life to the fullest because they have this particular malady. Now, for people, for those of you who are listening, you can definitely take a look at the links that Rachelle has for us to find out more about that course and more about different ways to connect with her. We also have her social media, so go ahead and follow her on social media, but definitely find out more about this because you'd be surprised. If it's not you, you may have a friend like I did that's suffering from the same things and not quite sure what to do. And here are some possible answers that can help you because chronic fatigue is definitely a journey. It's not something that you get over like right away, but there are things that you can do. So thank you so much, Rachelle, for sharing your expertise with us and being on the V.I.B.E Living podcast. It was wonderful having you here today.
Thank you. I do want to mention that I do have a book to give away. It's called Balance and Boost. It's tonics for your energy levels. So different drinks, in the morning or throughout the day that will help and give you a little boost of energy. And for anyone who might be interested, I'm giving away for free. Just send me an email. My email is getyourhealthylife@gmail.com. And just, put in the subject that I want the book and, let me know who you are and where you heard about this book from. And that's my present to anybody who's interested.
Well, fantastic. And we'll make sure that we put the link to your email address there so that if you want the book, all you have to do is just say, get the healthy book. I want the book, and she will send it to you. It sounds like it's got some wonderful information in there. That's fantastic. And also, you do help people virtually, correct?
I do help people virtually, yes.
Okay, fantastic. Rachelle, thank you so much. And thank you to all of you who have been here on the V.I.B.E Living podcast. It's always wonderful to get a chance to talk to the experts when it comes to the whole idea of being well, especially from a holistic perspective. Make sure you take a look not only at this podcast, but also the other podcasts that we have. Man, we have some wonderful interviews that I've done over the last few months of people who are really on top of it when it comes to wellness for your mind, body, and spirit, especially as you age. So thanks so much. If you like this podcast or any of the others, make sure you share it, respond, subscribe to the podcast so we can continue to stay up in the upper 10% of Apple Podcasts, or maybe we'll get even higher thanks to your help. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks for listening to the V.I.B.E Living podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and share this podcast. Have a fantastic day, and don't forget the vibe. Bye-bye, everybody.